Welcome to the Vis Show. I'm your barefoot host, Vis, and this episode 9 is called I'm Sexy and You Know It. I don't know if you've heard the tune by LMFAO, but every time I hear someone say I work out, I always hear the lyric from this song saying, I'm sexy and you know it. I work out. Because indeed, I do work out. But before you think that this is going to be an episode all about me telling you why I'm sexy or all about how to get six-pack abs as a natural 46-year-old man, that's not what this is. You might actually be surprised. So stick with me. I'm going to tell you a story about why I started working out, why I still work out, and how it's become part of my identity. And it's probably not what you think. And while I know I'm not a contender for the world's sexiest man competition, I do recognize that over the past 30 plus years of working out, I've built a physique that the internet at least says is desirable. So there is something to working out for the reasons of just how you look in the mirror. But we're going to go down a hole today that's going to examine a little bit more about psychology, about the emotions of why I work out and maybe other people that you know. And we're going to talk through some really hard issues. So Um, you might see me glancing down. I have an outline. I want to see if I can make this flow a little bit without really trying to read a script. I talk a lot about the fact that I have worked out regularly for over 30 years. I haven't mentioned that a whole lot maybe on the show so far, but most people that know me know that exercise or working out is a big part of my life. It's a big part of who I am. It's evident by the way my clothes fit. It's evident by the fact that I spend time doing it. I spend time studying the human body. I spend time studying biohacking, looking for new and better ways to improve muscle hypertrophy, growth, and maximize my recovery, especially as an aging individual. But all of this has really gotten me to where I was in a position where I knew I needed to at least do a first episode about fitness. It's too much a part of who I am as an individual to not share it in the context of the show. And I put it off. I kept putting it off. I delayed even recording this episode after I committed to it by at least 2, maybe 3 weeks. And the reason is because it is so overwhelming to me. Because as you'll see, the reason I started working out is it's a hard subject. It's a hard thing to deal with. And I've really struggled with the best way to convey it to you. The best way to convey it in a way that it highlights the part of the story that is the basis for things that have shaped my life and my character and my foundation in health and fitness, exercise, and even the way I see the world and respond to the world. And so it's a little bit of an origin story. So I want to preface this by saying I'm going to tell you what happened on my 13th birthday. Because if you hear me talk about my exercise habits, I may say something like I can probably count on one hand the number of times that I've had an entire week that I didn't have some physical activity or exercise since the time I was 13. Why is it always 13? It's very specific, as it turns out. So I'm going to tell you a story about an event that happened on my 13th birthday. And what I don't want you to do is take away from this story anything bad about the other person involved. So this is a story about me and my dad. And I want to be very careful while I give you the facts. I want you to know that I love my dad and I'm proud of my dad and I'm proud that he is my dad. And I believe that he did everything to the best of his ability to raise me and my siblings to be really amazing people. And if you knew my siblings, you would be astounded at the work that my mom and dad have done in raising 4 humans. But that's not to say that either of them were perfect. My dad, he came home the night I turned 13. He'd been out to dinner with a couple of friends and my mom. And he came home shortly after Christmas. My brother and I were playing a brand new game. We got a Super Nintendo that year, and we were busy playing Bill Laimbeer's Combat Basketball. We're playing back in the den, and he comes back from dinner. They'd had drinks, a number of drinks, and he tells my brother and I that we need to get off of the game so that we can use that room for our guests that were in from out of town that they had had dinner with. And when you're a child, you know that there's times when a parent is easy to set off. And so you have mechanisms to hurry up and get out of the way and move and things like that. And this was one of those situations. Like, we knew when he came back that it was a situation where we needed to be polite, respectful, and do what he asked us to do as quickly as possible. So I was playing this game, and he told us to get off of it in no uncertain terms. And I asked him if I could get to a place where I could save it, and he didn't think that meant I was being responsive enough or obedient enough. And so it escalated. And so I started removing myself from the area, and we ended up in a fight. And we ended up in a fight where I was way too small to protect myself or to really fight back to any degree, defend myself. And it didn't end well. The way it actually ended was I slept that night in my closet, holding on to a wooden baseball bat so I could have just a feeling of security or safety. And I tell you this, and again, I beg you, don't think badly of my dad. He and I have talked this over, worked it out. He didn't remember the next morning, and that's not an excuse by any stretch of the imagination. He wouldn't tell you that it is. But it happened. These are things that happen to people. These are real life things that happen to people. I am not alone by any stretch of the imagination because I experienced something traumatic at a formative age. The reason I tell you the story is because this specific event drove me from that time until I was about 18, which is the time when my dad and I finally worked it out. I started exercising because I wanted to be strong enough and big enough to fight back, beat up my dad, to save myself, potentially to save anybody else that might be in a similar situation. And so at 13 years old, I can remember having milk jugs full of water or sash weights from old double hung windows that I would have, and I would press them and I would curl them to failure night after night, day after day. I pushed myself and I pushed myself with the constant thought in my head that eventually I'll be strong enough to where I don't have to feel unsafe. I don't have to feel like I can't control the situation, and that I can fight back and I can protect myself and I can take revenge for what happened to me. What a horrible way to live life as a teenager. But the exercise became my coping mechanism. So I didn't even realize most of this until fairly recently. I read a book a few years ago called Emotionally Healthy Discipleship by a man named Peter Scazzero. And in this book, it digs into things that the Gen X man and the Boomer man don't really dig into very much. It digs into emotional intelligence. It digs into emotional vocabulary. And I realized through introspection, through this book, this study, that I had the emotional vocabulary of a 10-year-old, maybe even a 5-year-old. Like, I had about 3 ways that I felt like I could adequately describe how I felt. And this was as a 40-year-old man. I mean, this was just a few years ago. And I started to realize my lack of ability to express the things that I feel. And if I can't express the things that I feel, I realized I also couldn't trace those feelings back to their origin to understand why I was feeling them, or why my responses to those feelings were what they were. For instance, if I had a spouse or a child or someone close to me and we had a disagreement, or something made me feel inside as if you're taking away my control or my position of authority, that I would respond with anger and with a loud voice, not yelling necessarily, but with a very loud voice, and even a physical presence where I would bow up to create more space and feel more strong. And what I realized was that this was a response very similar to all of the working out that I've ever done. It was a response that I had developed to allow myself feel in control and to actually take control. Being an angry, scary man actually does give you control in a lot of situations. It's not healthy control. It's not control over myself necessarily, so it's not self-control, but I could generally find a way to control a conversation or an argument or a situation by being this way. And so I ended up with a feedback loop that reinforced over time that physical presence and strength gave me a sense of power and control that I've been chasing since my 13th birthday. And so if you know me, you know that I love working out. I really do. But it stems from a very, very different place. And so at a very young age, I began to push myself and push myself and push myself very single-mindedly to be stronger. And eventually that turns to, you start to see your body change, right? You start to see muscularity. You start to see things that in modern times would be, Instagram worthy, as you continue to train your body and train your body and train your body. When I was 14 or 15 years old, so the summer going into my freshman year in high school, I got up to where I was doing 1,000 push-ups and 1,000 sit-ups every single day. Like, that seems insane to me. It didn't seem insane at the time. It was just what I was doing. That was how I was coping with my emotional issues, my emotional turmoil of being a teenager, of living in a home where you hate your parent. And again, many of those issues have been dealt with over time. Time really does provide a way often of healing wounds, and I'm really thankful for that. And I'm thankful for my dad. I could also tell you so many stories of how my integrity and my character is strong because of what he taught me. So this is not a show to tell you that my dad's a bad person. This is a show to tell you that my dad had a bad moment. And that moment was pivotal in shaping who I am today. And so why do we train? Why do people train? Right? So as a Gen Xer, growing up the 80s and the 90s, the fitness industry was very different than it is now, right? We really had two main fitness icons. If you were a young heterosexual guy, you had two people that you really could look up to at the time. One was Arnold Schwarzenegger, of course. The other was Joe Weider. I mean, he was the guy that sold all the weights and the protein that we could use to get big and jacked and ripped so that we could look like Arnold. It was really the fitness industry for young men of that age really was only about bodybuilding. I don't remember any exposure to any other kind of fitness other than, of course, sports, pro sports or high school sports, college sports. But it wasn't like it is now with the social media influencers and things like that. I mean, it was literally magazines and TV were the only ways to see these people. And so you would see the bodybuilders and you either wanted to be like that or you didn't. And there wasn't really, I don't remember there being like a halfway point between being humongous with enormous veins and zero body fat or being Al Bundy from Married with Children. I mean, it basically those were your choices. Like, if you're going to be a man, then these are the two things that you're going to grow up and look like, probably. And it wasn't really talked about, but that's really what it was like. And so, as I got older and got out of high school and became an adult, I, of course, always trained. I would run. I would do push-ups daily, sit-ups. I wouldn't train so much with weights all the time. I had gym memberships along the way, but I've always really been drawn more to the calisthenics, the running, the swimming. And what I found in researching is that people with childhood trauma often are emotionally immature. And so we develop coping mechanisms. And you will hear people say, and it's true, that exercise can be a very healthy coping mechanism. It also can be unhealthy, and I don't think that's where I am. But the fact is, I exercise as a coping mechanism initially, and even still, for the original emotional trauma, but it has compounded now to where the way that I look in the mirror, the way that my shirts fit, my pants fit, and the way that I feel when I am exercising, if I'm pulling weight or doing push-ups or running, these are things that still contribute to me being able to feel a sense of power and self-sovereignty, self-control that in some sense I've always been chasing. And I don't know if I'll ever get to a point where I'm not chasing it. I'm at the point now where I recognize that it's there. I recognize that I'm looking for validation. I'm looking for power. I'm looking for control in situations. But I'm not at a place where I'm not seeking that, or at least my subconscious isn't seeking that as a general rule. It's very much a part of who I am. And so when we approach the idea of health, fitness, longevity, which are really good and important things, and I believe are important for your mental and emotional health, your physical health. I believe it's important for your spiritual health. I think it's all tied together. But as we look at people who have the Instagram bodies and are constantly training, it's easy for people who work out all the time to tell you all the reasons that they have convinced themselves that they do it. I do it to feel good. I do it because I want to be strong for my kids. I want to be strong for my grandkids. I do it because I read a book that says that if your VO2 max is higher, you can live longer and you can have a healthier lifespan. And these aren't necessarily untrue. But I would say, if I am any example, that there are many people out there who train for emotional reasons because they're fighting for something internally or against something internally. We all have drives that people around us don't understand, they don't see. These are internal drives that many of us never explore, so we don't even know the root of our own drives. And while I'm certain there are still things that I have yet to identify, I've put in a lot of work to understand some of the drivers behind my actions, particularly my bad actions. But the same drivers are the drivers that push me to succeed in other areas. It pushed me to be a healthy, strong, athletic individual. They're the same drivers. And there are good consequences, bad consequences. And so when you look at all the people around you that you think, I wish I could work out as much as this, and that I would get the results that he has, that my shirts would fit good and they'd feel tight on my arms when I first put them on. These are not bad things to want. It's not bad to want to be able to do things that somebody else does. But you have to also take into consideration the things that you don't know that are pushing them. I've had a lot of friends who don't like running at all, and they say, if you ever see me running, it's because somebody's chasing me. And that's really true. And I think that's true for a lot of people that love running. We love it because it makes us feel how we need to feel, because there's some internal emotion or an internal demon that is chasing us, figuratively speaking. And so we run to outperform whatever it is that's chasing us, or we run to catch some elusive goal or ideal that we have for ourselves. So when we think about life and we think about people, we have to take them as a whole and understand that, well, there's a lot about somebody that works out a lot, that's very quote unquote disciplined with their eating or with their workout habits. We don't understand the thought structures that they have in place that produce those outcomes. And so what are the outcomes? I do want to talk a little bit about the exercise that I like. I don't want to just like completely leave that out of there, because for me, exercise is something that I have learned to enjoy. I love the feeling of movements executed well, of movements executed powerfully. I love the feeling of speed. Like, still being able to sprint at my age is a glorious feeling, even though it's terrifying trying to figure out how to stop. Um, Being able to jump up and touch a basketball rim feels really, really good. Feeling the coordination of your body still working together to produce this type of outcome. Figuring out how to land from that jump is also terrifying at 46 years old. And so there are things that I do instead of just straight working out in order to look a certain way or to be able to do a certain amount of weight on a bench press or a squat. I like movement as an exercise. There's various things to move, including crawling, bear crawling, all types of different crawling and climbing, monkey bars, pull-ups, climbing trees, climbing jungle gyms. These are things that I like because I like the ability to coordinate movement in ways that make my body feel mobile and strong and capable in different situations. And so I find these outside. I find them at the local park, at the local elementary school playground, when there's no kids present, of course. But I find myself exercising in all kinds of places. And yes, I'm the guy that people are looking at like, he's kind of nuts. Not only is he not wearing shoes, but he's rolling around on the ground and crawling like a lizard and climbing over the top of the 5-year-old's jungle gym. What are you going to do? I'm your barefoot host. I do barefoot things. I love working out outside. To me, there's no better way to get me to stop exercising than to force me to do it inside. I like the elements. I like the sunshine. I like the dark. I like the heat. I hate the cold, but I'll do it because I know it's important. Which brings me to my most recent exercise modality, which isn't really a modality. It's an avenue that I have come on where I exercise with a group of men multiple mornings a week with a group called F3. There are decentralized groups all around the world, especially all over the United States. And you can go to f3nation.com and find their locator, and very likely you will find an F3 group that meets near you. And what's really cool about this group is that it's a way for guys to get together and work out. It's a sort of a boot camp style, meaning that it's predominantly calisthenics that they do. It's a 45-minute workout, and it's no excuses. It's always free, always outdoors, rain or shine. They always end with a circle of trust. They always are led by peers. That's how they keep it free. Everybody that's there that works out volunteers for a day to lead the group. So you get a lot of different styles, you get a lot of different things, and it's intended to build men who are leaders. But the way they do that is just by getting guys together to do hard things when most people wouldn't. But it builds a camaraderie. It builds a healthy way to deal with emotions as you begin to open up to these other men in your life. And so at that point, I'm no longer having to use the exercise as the outlet for internal emotional issues. I can use the exercise just as an outlet and use human connection to help me sort through the issues of the world, the weight that comes on from stress of being a dad or a husband or an employee in modern society. So I'm very, very excited to be a part of this group, and I expect I probably will be for a long time, but it's something that allows me to do things that I'm going to do anyway, but with other people. So while this show is predominantly about working out, it really is about dealing with emotional turmoil and trauma in our lives. And the healthiest way to do that is to share it with people who are trustworthy, people who are around you that you can have human connection with. And so I encourage you today to take your shoes off, go outside, do some squats, do some push-ups, some bear crawls, do some mountain climbers, sit in the sun, sit in the rain. If it's cold, if it's hot, go out there and do it, but feel it. Feel the movement. Feel your body moving through space. But mostly I would encourage you today to find some people to help you unpack the things inside of your own head. Working out is very important, highly advisable for your emotional health, for your spiritual health, and especially for your physical health. But if there's one thing that I do that I could recommend the most, it wouldn't be the physical exercise part. It would be the human connection part of find people that you can trust, that you can open up to. And then take your shoes off, exercise, have a good time. That's all I got for today. I really appreciate you coming on this story with me while I just unpack some of these things. It was really overwhelming to get it out there. But I think it's important for you to know. I think it's important for me to leave behind as a legacy for the kids and the grandkids. So I look forward to unpacking something completely different on the next show. And thank you for watching.